Yes, family, welcome back to the African Diaspora News channel with me, Richard Sudan. Thank you for tuning in. Please like and subscribe and support the platform. Tell a friend to tell a friend and spread the word about independent black media. This platform is more necessary, vital and needed than ever. Now, I wanted to talk to you today, just offer a few reflections really on the verdict regarding Derek Chauvin over the murder of George Floyd last year. Now, it's been a few days really since the verdict has settled in, and there's been a lot of different reactions. There's been a lot of celebration in the United States and around the world really about the verdict. But I just wanted to offer a few thoughts really about my take on the verdict and what this really means. Now, I took part recently in a TV discussion on a panel which was really looking at the verdict, and we talked about a number of points really. Now, my first takeaway is that on the one level, I'm glad, of course, that Derek Chauvin has been found guilty on all counts, as he should have been. A lot of people felt there should have been a first-degree murder charge, but that said, Chauvin was found guilty on all the charges he was facing. Before we get into this, let's just take a quick look at the verdict to remind ourselves of what the judge had to say, and also so we can see Chauvin's reaction. Let's take a look.
Verdict, count 1. Court file number 27, CR 20-12646. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 1, unintentional second-degree murder while committing a felony, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April 2021 at 1:44 p.m. Signed, juror foreperson, juror number 19. Same caption, verdict count 2. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 2, third-degree murder, perpetrating an eminently dangerous act, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April 2021 at 1:45 p.m. Signed by jury foreperson, juror number 19. Same caption, verdict count 3. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 3, second-degree manslaughter, culpable negligence, creating an unreasonable risk, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April 2021 at 1:45 p.m.
So as we can see, one of the first things really is the look of shock really on Chauvin's face. I believe he was shocked because he was comfortable up to a certain point. He believed that the system was going to vindicate him as it had done on so many other occasions, in terms of officers not even being charged really, but on the rare times that officers were charged with murder or manslaughter, so often those officers actually walked free instead of actually being sent to prison and facing jail time. Of course, it's interesting, America is coined land of the free, because for me, it does live up to its name in the sense that there are so many suspected white supremacist killers who are walking in the streets, who have got away with murder, not just police officers but others who have also got away with brutal acts of violence and murder, maiming and killing and severely injuring black people all across the country. So the first thing that was quite obvious is that Derek Chauvin was actually surprised, I think, that he was found guilty. Now, on the one hand, this is good for George Floyd's family. Of course, nothing is going to bring George Floyd back to his family, but hopefully this verdict will offer some measure of solace and comfort to his family. Now, of course, the sentencing itself is still set to be around 6 or 7 weeks away. And on the one hand, I suppose it's tempting to view the verdict as a stepping stone in the path towards justice. But for me, unless Derek Chauvin ends up spending the rest of his natural life, or certainly the part of it which really is going to count for the rest of his natural life, unless he spends at least a few decades in prison, for me, he should never be released. But if he gets, as some people are saying, if he gets the kind of lower end of the sentencing, which is, I think, 12 and a half years, this will be a massive injustice. Now, a lot of people are hailing this as some kind of landmark moment in the kind of American so-called justice system. But for me, unless the verdict of Derek Chauvin sets a precedent moving forward, unless there's the same measure of focus and commitment to ensuring that all the other officers who have continued to kill black people, that they are charged too and also face accountability, this result really will be a piece of symbolism and will be meaningless unless it sets a precedent moving forward. Because the way I really view this is the only way, and there's all sorts of discussions really about how to curb the problem. But for me, the more I look at this issue, the more the answer seems quite simple. Police officers need to be charged. They need to be charged quickly. They need to get firm, long and harsh sentences. They need to lose their pensions. They need to be punished both in terms of custodial sentences behind bars in jail, but they need to lose their money. And this needs to happen quickly. So unless there's some serious kind of structural changes, I don't really see moving forward how this case is going to have implications. Of course, there were people poised all around the country to react if Derek Chauvin was going to be found innocent. So I think maybe because of the kind of nature and the attention on this case, maybe it was an anomaly. I want to be proved wrong. I want to see more officers charged and sentenced in the future. But of course, something I've not really seen mentioned too much is, of course, the widespread problem of white supremacy, white supremacism, and white supremacist groups, not just in the police force, but throughout all levels of law enforcement and the so-called justice system. Now, let's remind ourselves actually of what Christopher Wray, the FBI director, had to say in March when he was grilled by, I think it was a Senate committee. He was grilled by legislators and he was forced to answer the question about white supremacy and the depth and extent of it in the United States. Let's take a look at this.
Let me start with a quick update on the investigation into the January 6th attack here at the Capitol. I was appalled, like you, at the violence and destruction that we saw that day. I was appalled that you, our country's elected leaders, were victimized right here in these very halls. That attack, that siege, was criminal behavior, plain and simple, and it's behavior that we, the FBI, view as domestic terrorism.
In an unclassified FBI DHS Joint Intelligence Bulletin in May 2017 found that white supremacist extremism poses a persistent threat of lethal violence. Went on to say that white supremacists were responsible for more homicides from 2000 to 2016 than any other domestic extremist movement. 7 members of the committee joined me in writing a letter to you and Attorney General Barr explaining our concern about whether the FBI and Department of Justice were taking adequate measures to combat white supremacist violence and minimizing this growing domestic terrorism threat.
And I will say that a majority of the domestic terrorism cases that we've investigated are motivated by some version of what you might call white supremacist violence.
So this is the FBI director himself, I would say almost being cornered and forced into acknowledging just how deep white supremacy as an ideology is in terms of its presence and infiltration in the police force. So for me, unless there are serious measures to really root out these white supremacist groups, individuals, punish them accordingly and set the tone, there's nothing to really deal with the much wider problem within law enforcement, because of course Derek Chauvin is one officer, and the reason he killed George Floyd is really because he believed he would get away with it. And the reason he believed he would get away with it is because it's so widely entrenched in the police force and so-called justice system that officers almost never face accountability. And so I worry now there's a danger that with the guilty verdict of Derek Chauvin, as it should have been, that somehow the focus will be kind of taken off other cases which have even happened since the verdict of Derek Chauvin. And actually, for me, there are plenty of cases, I'm sure, in the past where there were, cases to answer for police officers which walked. So I want to know what the implications are for not just instances of police murdering black people since the Derek Chauvin verdict, but also the previous cases. Because it seems to me, unless white supremacy is rooted out, unless officers are punished, unless there is some serious radical measure to tackle the deep problem of white supremacism in policing, I don't really see how the situation is going to change. And of course, we've got a president in Joe Biden who many, was sort of celebrating the victory of, as if he doesn't have the record he has regarding racist comments, his commitment to pushing through policies which have massively punished the black community, like pushing through the 94 crime bill. Joe Biden has showed no political will. He's taken no real serious action on dealing with policing or mass incarceration, no executive orders. There's no talk of any anti-black hate bill passing through the United States. We saw the recent, anti-Asian hate crime bill get passed very quickly, but there's nothing for black people. And so I think it's hypocritical, and I think many found it insulting that Joe Biden had the temerity to praise the verdict of Derek Chauvin, knowing full well that he has not done anything himself to actually deal with the very real systemic racism which plagues the United States. And so I think with the Derek Chauvin trial, unless there's a real focus and commitment and energy regarding all the other cases which are going to transpire, unless there's some real serious action taken to deal with policing. And by the way, it's not a few bad apples, as we know. The entire basket is rotten to the core. And, we've also seen the talk of the George Floyd Justice in Policing bill becoming law, which really, when you peel away the layers of it, actually gives the police more funding and works on the presumption that they're going to police themselves regarding the implementation of things like body cams, regarding the banning and the stopping or enforcing the non-use of things like the chokehold, which are already not supposed to be used. So unless there's some new mechanisms put in place, it seems to me like a case of smoke and mirrors. The police are about to get more funding. They cannot be trusted to police themselves. We have the same situation here in the United Kingdom. The body the organisation which is supposed to police the police. Here it's called the Independent Office of Police Complaints, but it's basically run by ex-police officers, and so it's anything but independent. And so I fail to see how the Derek Chauvin verdict, beyond the symbolism and beyond the stepping stone for justice it might have for the family of George Floyd, I don't really see how this in itself is going to change the dire situation in the United States. I don't see how that situation is going to change regarding Joe Biden as president, because he really doesn't care about black people as far as I can see, and all the evidence proves it. Black people need to be in a position where they can defend themselves under the Constitution without being viewed as targets. But of course, we already know how the police view black people. So how is one verdict going to change a long-standing situation in the United States? White supremacy in the United States is hundreds of years old. So on the one hand, for me, I'm happy for George Floyd's family that there was a guilty verdict, but I'm very skeptical about the sentencing. I want to see exactly what the sentencing is for Derek Chauvin, and I wouldn't be surprised if the sentencing is less than what it should be. So let us know what you think about this issue in the comments. Let us know how you think things are going to pan out in the next few weeks. The whole world will be watching when Derek Chauvin is eventually sentenced in a few weeks' time. We'll all be hoping, of course, he gets the sentence he should. but I'm very skeptical about the United States. And I think we all know enough to know that justice in the United States is a far cry. This is why people call it a system of injustice. It's not a justice system. Let's see how things transpire. For now, thank you for tuning in. Please support, like and subscribe, and support the African Diaspora News channel. We appreciate you tuning in. As always, let us know what you think in the comments section. For now, I will sign off, and we will see you next time.
Hey brothers, I want to tell you about a website called blackmenszone.com. Now, Black Men's Zone is a site that specifically targets black men. It's a place where black men talk about issues that solely affect them. Now, at Black Men's Zone, the topics will range from news to society, sports, technology, business, food and recipes. Some brothers got to cook too. Gaming, and some of your brothers like doing some of that. Health and fitness, got to get your workout on. Music, movies, and many other topics. Now, there's not many forums around these days for black men, and because black men have to create them. Now, this particular website is more of a forum based, something simple, not social media. You can write what you need to write, say what you need to say, get on, get off pretty quick. But if you're interested, brothers, to at least go there, and I want you to check it out, engage in the topics, go to blackmenszone.com, sign up for an account, and get engaged in the conversation.
Thank you for watching, and make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel and check out the African Diaspora News Channel app in the Google Play and Apple App Store.